Hello friends, welcome to another show of the Chalk Talk series, Identity Security for AI Agents. This one is going to be my favorite. You all would have heard the term agents are autonomous. They learn, they reason, they adapt, which means that as you create these agents, you're going to define a scope, a boundary, a permission sets, but agents are not going to honor them. That creates a problem statement which every organization is thinking and designing for, which means when an agent is interacting and accessing your data from enterprise applications at runtime, you have to monitor, you have to understand if they are deviating from their original intent and purpose, and make sure that they are not doing any catastrophic transactions to your enterprise applications. How do you do that? Let's take a look. As you build your agents, these could be of different types. You will have your IT ops agent. You could have a marketing agent. You could have a finance agent. You could have an HR agent. Now, as you continue to build these agents, the purpose for these agents is to talk to enterprise applications. This could be your SaaS apps, ERP applications, infrastructure as a service applications. It could be databases. It could be directory systems and any and every other application which you can think of. Now, as these applications are interacting or getting interacted and consumed by agents, the agents are going to interact using tools, APIs, MCP interfaces or model context protocol interfaces. So, the question is, how do you define a security policy which gets enforced in real time for every agentic transaction happening? And this is where Savynt's MCP gateway or access gateway comes in. This is an MCP interface from Savynt's access gateway. It has got two parts. One is an MCP interface and the other one is a policy engine. As I mentioned, Savynt's access gateway is nothing but an MCP server, which means you can consume this entire component as an MCP endpoint to your agents. Now, what does that MCP interface gives you? One, it offers you a tool registry, which means any and every tool of your underlying applications can be exposed, controlled, and defined what all are going to be available for the agents to consume, number one. Number two are your action interceptors. Every tool call by the agent to an underlying application gets mapped to an underlying API call for that application as well. And last but not the least is your resource mapping, which also plays a very important role. The reason being is each and every API call has to be mapped to the underlying assets, resources in the underlying application as well. So, that's the first component of what the Savynt's access gateway exposes from underlying application for the agents to consume, map it to their intent, define what tools and API calls they can consume and they can invoke on the target application. The second part of your access gateway is all about policy evaluation. If you have as an organization, have a policy stating that anytime a rogue agent, an orphan agent, or an unregistered agent should never be able to perform an agentic transaction, you can enforce that and you should be enforcing that at the gateway layer. Second, very important aspect here is intent analysis. This is an interesting one. Try this with your agents which you are comfortable with. Write in your Claude code, Amazon Q, saying that go ahead and clean up my CRM records or Jira task. What you would understand and see that is that at times a large language model understands these NLP prompts to be done in a much different way. You as a user, your intent could be as simple as go ahead and optimize my records in Jira, Google Drive or CRM systems. Whereas an agent is being instructed by a large language model to go ahead and delete all your records. So, at any given point of time, when an agent is being tasked by a human or by an agent to a sub-agent, understanding the intent becomes extremely important and imperative. And that is why one of the four most important aspects of Savient's gateway or access gateway is to understand, analyze that intent and map it to the actual transaction the agent is going to perform on a particular target system. And the last one here in this case is going to be your decision plus audit, which means any and every point of time, what is the final decision which this component is going to have for this agent to perform on a target application. Because this basically drives the different outcomes the gateway can have. And it is as simple as either your transaction is going to be allowed or it is going to be blocked. For example, if the agent's intent is to be going in and exporting all your data outside your CRM system, and if your policy says that such kind of data exfiltration is not allowed, which ideally it should be, then those transactions get blocked. You can also have a human in the loop outcome. What if the agent is trying to delete a mass set of records, old and archived records? It may be a legitimate reason, but you still want a human in the loop to go ahead and make sure that it gets approved. And last but not the least, you log everything to have provenance in this complex identity chaining workflow scenarios. So, at any given point of time, when you have an access gateway, what do you really get? You get runtime enforcement of access and policies. You can define what the access for your agents at design time is, but those access can be tweaked, changed, modified at runtime depending on what the agent's intent is, as well as you can enforce your corporate policies like rogue agents should never be performing an agentic transactions, number one. Number two, you eliminate chaining risk. See, it's very important to understand when you have multi-agent systems talking to each other, it's very common that if one of the agents has gone rogue, it can create a massive risk for the other agent identities in your ecosystem. And that is why having a system wherein somebody like a Saviynt's access gateway is monitoring every agentic transaction becomes paramount to eliminate such kind of chaining risk in your ecosystem. The third one in this case is you having least privileged access recommendations for your agents. Our original goal was also to ensure that agents never have residual access, standing access or high privileged access permanently, and access gateway allows you to constantly monitor and remove any such unused as well as access which the agents have never been using or it's an outlier access into this ecosystem. And last but not the least, this entire interface, as I mentioned, is an MCP native interface, which means it is made for agentic systems which are built on the principles of model context protocol, so that you can do this at scale with all your new technologies which are coming up. This is what Saviynt's access gateway brings to the table by empowering organizations to monitor and enforce their policies at runtime for every agentic transactions going and happening in their ecosystem. Friends, again, it is very imperative that design time controls are not sufficient for AI agents. You have to have a runtime enforcement engine, and that's what Saviynt Access Gateway is built for. I hope you found this session useful. I'm very excited to talk about the on behalf of access flows and autonomous workflows and the role of Saviynt's gateway in my next Chalk Talk. So looking forward to having you there. Till then, thank you once again for giving me your time and attending this session.